The average person making $100,000 a year is driving a car that they technically can't afford. I know this because I actually work as a credit analyst and I see these people every single day. Most people think making six figures means that you finally made it and that you've earned the right to walk into the dealership and get any vehicle you set your eyes to. And honestly, that belief makes complete sense. You worked really hard to get to your salary. But here's what nobody tells you. Making $100,000 is the most dangerous salary you can possibly have when purchasing a vehicle. Not because you can't afford something nice, but because you make enough where you could ultimately get approved for almost any vehicle on the lot, which means that the dealership will stretch your term and your loan out long enough to get you to whatever payment makes the most sense for your budget. In this video, I'll show you the exact math, the real maximum number that you should be aiming for to assure that you're not totally breaking your finances. And that one specific number is the number the dealership hopes you'll never figure out. And before we even get to the payments, your $100,000 is not $100K. After taxes and standard deductions, your take home is anywhere in the ballpark of $5,800 to about $6,500 take home per month. Again, numbers can slightly vary depending on deductions, the state that you live in, all the other fun stuff, but on average, that's about the normal take home for that salary. And that's your real number. That's the amount that hits your bank account every month. That's the number that has to survive rent, groceries, investments, and of course the car payment every month. So when a dealer tells you that you're approved for a $1,200 payment and it sounds manageable, I need you to understand exactly how that number got built, because the math behind it is not in your favor. And to show you exactly how it works against you, I need to show you one rule that actually protects you in the dealership. Most people have never even heard of it, and almost nobody follows it correctly. And it's surprisingly the part that saves you the most money, yet almost everybody skips it. The rule is called the 20-4-10 rule. Let's start with the 10 because this is where most people immediately go wrong. The 10 represents your total transportation costs. So your loan payment, your insurance, and then of course either gas or electric, depending on what vehicle you drive. So that number cannot exceed 10% of your monthly gross income. Okay, very simple example for people like you making $100,000. Take that 100K, divide it by 12, and you come out with roughly $8,333 and some change. Now, of course, 10% of that would just be $833. That's your absolute ceiling. But here's something that I see every single week whenever deals come across my desk. Someone gets approved for a payment that looks somewhat reasonable, but the second I look at the full structure, it completely falls apart. Insurance alone runs $200 to $300 easily, depending on the car that you want. Of course, factor in age, and that can even be higher, not to mention if you have any sort of prior wrecks on your insurance or anything else like speeding tickets that might inflate that. Premium gas alone runs another $100 to $150 a month, of course, depending on how far you drive and how often you drive your car. Now the 4. You will finance no more than 48 months of your car loan. This is the one that I can't stress enough because in all honesty, this is where the most damage is done whenever you go into the dealership and decide to finance your vehicle. On a daily basis, I see people processing 72 to 84 months just to stretch out that payment as much as possible so that they can technically afford it. And of course that is true, right? So it will lower your payment, but on the back end, you're paying thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars of additional interest financing that loan over 82 months. The payment itself feels affordable, the total cost is not. And most customers never look at the total cost. They are only worried about just that monthly payment. Now here's a hot take. If you can't afford the car that you want on a 48-month term, you can't afford the car. That's the line. Anything past that to 60 to 72 months, I would almost always recommend against it, unless with a small caveat, if you are financing a vehicle and there are special subvent incentives that are making the term longer with a lower interest rate for whatever reason, that's the only time that I would technically break that rule. 20% down, no exceptions here. Cars depreciate the second that you drive off the lot with that new vehicle. Without that 20% down, you're almost certainly going to be underwater on that car, meaning you would owe more than what the car is actually worth if you were to go to resell it or if the vehicle were to get totaled for whatever reason. Of course, there are products like Gap that would help mitigate that, but by no means is that me suggesting that you should just go for Gap, because even in some cases, depending on how much you owe, Gap might not cover that full amount. So I know you've been wondering at this point, what is the maximum payment you should have making that 100K income that's so coveted? Factoring in everything we've already talked about, with a $450 maximum loan payment, a 48-month term, and today's average interest rates around 7%. Of course, factoring in your 20% down payment, which is about $4,600, the grand total would come out to about $23,000 of total car price. Now I know that number might sting because you make $100,000 a year and the max number that I'm saying is $23,000. But this number 100% protects you. If you're someone that doesn't care about your vehicle either, this will ensure that everything else in your life goes so smoothly. And this is exactly the line between someone who looks wealthy and someone who's actually wealthy. The people who look wealthy are the ones taking $70,000 loans and extending it out over 84 months. The payment looks fine, but they have zero liquidity, zero investments, and nothing else to show for other than their shiny brand new car. And they're one missed payment away from a repossession. The people who actually build wealth are the ones that are driving the $23,000 car. They take that $500 difference than the other person driving the $70,000 BMW and investing that difference that can turn into $700,000 over that 30-year time horizon. You're not choosing a car. You're ultimately choosing what you're gonna be spending your money on for the rest of your life. I want you to picture this for me. You pull up to a red light with no stress, no massive payment hanging over your head, investment accounts growing through the roof. You own your car outright when the person financing that $70,000 car has only made about half of the payments and it's worth 20 to 30% less than when they first started. That is what the right decision at the dealership buys you. Not a logo on the hood, but real financial freedom. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like, as well as check out this video about how much car you can afford if you make $75,000 a year. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day.